There's a specific moment in Parasite that most people who grew up without money recognize instantly. The Kim family, living in a semi-basement apartment, folding pizza boxes for income, scraping together enough to get through the week, gets an opportunity, a way in, a chance to move through spaces that weren't built for them. And they take it. Not just the money, the whole thing. The clothes, the language, the posture, the behavior. They learn to perform belonging in a world that would, if it knew the truth, close its doors. You might not have infiltrated a wealthy household, but you know that performance. You know what it feels like to check your account before you agree to go out, to calculate whether you can afford this round before you offer, to laugh at something you can't afford as if it doesn't affect you, to say, "I'm good," when someone asks if you want to order food and you're hungry, to be the broke friend and to make sure nobody finds out. This video is about that. Not about poverty as an abstract social issue, but about the specific, personal, and quiet psychological toll of hiding financial stress from people you love, and why the hiding is often harder than the money problem itself. There are two separate things happening when you're financially struggling and surrounded by people who aren't. There is the stress of being broke and the shame of being broke. The first is practical. The math doesn't work. You're doing the calculations that nobody else at the table is doing. Every social situation becomes a quiet financial negotiation. You have to negotiate what you can say yes to, what you have to quietly avoid, what excuses you need to have ready. That part is exhausting, but it's survivable. The second part is worse. It's the shame. Shame is not the same as guilt. Guilt says, "I did something bad." Shame says, "I am something bad." Brené Brown's research on shame makes this distinction clearly. Guilt is about behavior. Shame is about identity. And financial shame specifically doesn't say, "I'm going through a hard time." It says, "There is something wrong with me, something I need to hide, something that if the people around me could see it clearly, would change how they see me." That belief that your financial situation reveals something fundamental and unflattering about your character is what turns money stress into something much heavier. It's what makes the broke friend not just financially stressed, but secretly, quietly ashamed. Bong Joon-ho is precise about this in Parasite. The Kim family is not hiding poverty, they are hiding a story about who they are. The Kim family doesn't experience their poverty as a neutral fact, they experience it as a verdict, as something that, if seen, would reduce them in the eyes of everyone around them. Watch how the family behaves when they're in the Park household. They're not just pretending to have certain skills or credentials, they're performing a version of themselves that belongs, that fits, that doesn't trigger the subtle, often unconscious social calculations that wealthy people make when they detect someone who isn't quite from their world. They're performing competence and ease, the specific body language of people who have never had to count. That performance is something millions of people do every single day, not in a wealthy employer's home, just in their friend groups, their workplaces, their relationships. You learn to speak about money the way people who don't worry about money speak about money, casually, as if it's not the first thing you think about when a plan gets made. You learn to make excuses that don't sound like excuses. Excuses like, "I'm tired," "I have plans," "I'm trying to eat in more." Things that are true enough to not be lies, but not close enough to the truth to require a real conversation. The excuses make you very, very good at managing perception. Now, there is a reason why you hide it from people you love. And truthfully, people from the outside are always confused by this. If your friends love you, if they actually wouldn't care, why not just tell them? People ask this every time. The question sounds simple. The answer is not. First, you don't actually know if they wouldn't care. You believe they'd say the right things, but you don't know what would shift, however subtly, in how they see you, and the risk of finding out feels too high. Second, telling them requires you to say out loud the thing you've been working hardest to keep quiet. It requires you to make your shame concrete, to watch someone else's face while they process information about you that you've been protecting them and yourself from. Third, there's something in the hiding that feels like the last form of control you have. If no one knows, you're still choosing when and how you're perceived, and the moment you tell someone, you've handed that over. The Kim family understands this implicitly. The worst threat in the film isn't losing the money, it's being seen, being caught, being reduced in someone else's eyes to exactly what they've been running from. And here's the social comparison layer underneath all of it. When you're surrounded by friends who seem financially comfortable, who suggest restaurants without checking the price, who book trips on a whim, who Venmo without thinking, your situation doesn't just feel hard, it feels like evidence. Evidence that they are one thing and you are another. That the gap between you isn't just financial. The gap says something about where you're headed, who you'll become, what you deserve. Social comparison theory tells us that we evaluate ourselves largely through contrast with those around us. And when the people you're closest to are the people you're contrasting yourself against most sharply, every dinner, every group chat, every spontaneous plan, the math gets brutal. There's research on what's called the cognitive burden of poverty, the mental bandwidth consumed by financial stress. Sendil Mullainathan and Eldar Shafir documented this in their work on scarcity. The finding revealed that financial precarity doesn't just create practical problems, it occupies mental space. It crowds out cognitive resources that would otherwise go toward creativity, long-term planning, emotional regulation. You're doing a second job in your head all the time. Budget math, excuse preparation, perception management, risk assessment for every social situation. And nobody sees that job, because part of the job is making sure nobody sees it. This is the poverty penalty that never makes it into conversations about class. Not just the practical disadvantages of having less money, but the cognitive and emotional overhead of hiding that you have less money, of performing ease while managing scarcity, of being present in a conversation while simultaneously calculating whether you can afford the thing being casually suggested. You're never fully there. Part of you is always doing the math. And that is why for broke people, the shame is a protection, and the hiding isn't weakness. The hiding makes sense. It's protecting something real, the image others have of you, which feels, rightly or wrongly, connected to the opportunities they'll offer you, the confidence they'll show in you, the way they'll speak to you and about you. The Kim family understands at an instinctive level that class isn't just money, it's a set of signals, behaviors, vocabularies, reference points, and ease. And the moment those signals break, the moment the performance slips, the social consequences are real. That's not paranoia. In a world that absolutely does judge people on visible markers of class, protecting those markers is a rational response. But here's what that protection costs over time. The people who love you can't actually love the real version of you if they only have access to the managed version. The relationships stay warm but stay surface. The moments that could become genuine closeness get redirected. You become known, maybe well-liked, maybe respected, but never fully reached. And the shame compounds, because now you're not just hiding the financial stress, you're hiding the fact that you've been hiding. You're maintaining a story that has layers. That's a lonely place to live. So, what happens at the end of Parasite? Well, the film ends badly, not because the Kims were bad people, not because their plan was uniquely corrupt. It ends badly because the gap between what they had to pretend to be and what they were allowed to actually be became impossible to maintain. The violence in Parasite is not incidental. It's what class pressure looks like when it runs out of room. Most of us don't live in a Bong Joon-ho film. The stakes aren't cinematic, but the pressure is real. The performance is real. The exhaustion of it is real. And the loneliness of being loved by people who don't quite have the full picture of who you are, that's real too. You don't have to resolve the finances to put down some of the shame. They're not the same problem. The money situation is what it is. The shame is a story built on top of it. The belief that the situation reveals something irreparable about your worth, your trajectory, your right to take up the same space as the people around you. That belief is not the truth. It's a strategy, a protection mechanism, and like all protection mechanisms, it made sense once, but you've been running it so long it started to feel like identity. It's not. You're not the broke friend. You're a person going through something financially hard, in a culture that has decided to treat financial struggle as a character verdict instead of a circumstance. The gap between those two things is where the shame lives, and naming it, even just to yourself, is the first way out. Thank you for watching. If you found value, share in the comments your thoughts on today's subject matter. We would like to hear from you. And if you know someone who will benefit from this video, send it to them. Subscribe for more. See you in the next one.